Greetings and salutations. This is the Adjutant. One of the saddest things I have seen during my years in the military is watching young soldiers receive an opportunity that could completely transform their lives, and then unknowingly they throw it away. Not because they're bad people, not because they are lazy, not because they lack intelligence, but because nobody ever taught them how to think about money. You see, whenever people think or talk about financial mistakes in the military, they usually focus on the obvious things. The Dodge Charger, the lift truck, the expensive rims, the designer clothes, the nightclub spending. And yes, those things can absolutely create financial problems. But in my experience, those things are just symptoms. They are not the disease. The real problem runs actually much deeper. The biggest money mistake young soldiers make is building a lifestyle before building financial discipline. And that single mistake can follow them for decades. Now, today I want to explain exactly why that happens, why it is so dangerous, and what young military members can do differently if they truly want financial freedom. So, let's go ahead and get on into it. Now, when many young men and women join the military, they experience something they have never experienced before. What is that? Predictability. For the first time in their lives, they know exactly when a paycheck is coming. For the first time in their lives, somebody is providing structure. For the first time in their lives, they have stable housing, health care, food, and guaranteed income. Now, if you grew up in a stable middle-class household, that may not sound like a big deal. But for many military members who come from environments where financial stability was never guaranteed, some grew up watching parents struggle to pay bills. Some grew up in poverty. Some grew up in households where money was always a source of stress. And so when that first military paycheck arrives, it creates something powerful. It creates a feeling. And that feelings are often more dangerous than numbers, because suddenly a young soldier who has never had financial security begins to feel rich. Now, let me be clear. They are not actually rich, but compared to where they came from, it feels like wealth. And that feeling changes behavior. Instead of asking, how do I build wealth? Many begin asking, what can I buy? And that question changes everything, because wealth is built through ownership. But financial struggle is often built through consumption. Now, the moment a person starts viewing every paycheck as permission to spend instead of an opportunity to build, they begin walking down a very dangerous road. I have watched this happen over and over again. A young soldier, they get promoted, receive a pay increase, get a bonus, receive deployment money, receive tax-free income, and almost immediately their lifestyle expands. The car payment gets larger, the apartment gets larger, the spending increases, the subscriptions multiply, the habits become more expensive. The problem is that income rises, but discipline does not. And when discipline fails to grow alongside income, financial problems are almost guaranteed. Now, one of the greatest illusions in the military is what I call barracks wealth. Now, who knows what barracks are? Raise your hand out there. A young soldier may have very few actual living expenses. Housing is pretty much largely covered. Healthcare, again, is largely covered. Food expenses are reduced. Many of the major financial burdens that civilians face every month are already being absorbed by the military system. Yes, despite all of those advantages, many young soldiers still live paycheck to paycheck. Now, think about that for a moment, folks. All right, let's think about that. If a person struggles to save money while someone else is paying for many of life's biggest expenses, what happens when those protections just disappear? What happens after separation? What happens after retirement? What happens when rent, healthcare, utilities, insurance, and every other expense become their full responsibility? And that is why I often tell young military members something they do not always want to hear. If you cannot save money while the military is covering most of all your life, civilian life is going to hit you like a freight train. That statement may sound harsh, but it's true, because the military provides one of the biggest environments in the world for building financial habits. And if those habits are not developed during that period, the future becomes much harder. Now, but there is another layer to this conversation that almost nobody talks about. And honestly, I think it is the most important layer. The real issue is often emotional. Money is rarely just about money. Sometimes money becomes validation. All right? What do I mean by that? Sometimes money becomes identity. Sometimes money becomes therapy. Sometimes money becomes a temporary escape from pain. A young soldier who grew up feeling overlooked may use money to feel important. To go out and buy some new duds, all right? A young soldier who struggled growing up may use money to prove they are successful. A young soldier who feels lonely may spend money chasing experiences, and before they realize it, spending becomes emotional. It is no longer about needs. It is no longer about goals. It is about feeling, and feelings are expensive. One of the most important lessons I learned in life is that many people are not spending money. They are spending emotions. They are trying to purchase confidence, purchase validation, purchase belonging, purchase significance, purchase peace. The problem is that none of those things can actually be bought, at least not permanently, okay? And so spending continues, the debt grows, the stress increases, and the underlying emotional issue remains unresolved. A lot of young soldiers are not spending money, they are trying to spend their pain away. And unfortunately, that strategy, folks, it just never works. Now, let me talk about what financial successful military members do differently, because I have watched many military members become genuinely wealthy, not flashy, not famous, not attention seeking, just financially secure. And there are patterns to that. The first thing they do is save before they spend. Not after, before. They treat savings as a bill, a non-negotiable bill. Every paycheck has a purpose. Every dollar has an assignment. And because of that, they constantly build financial strength over time. The second thing they do is to start investing early. Many people underestimate the power of time. That is one of the greatest wealth building tools in existence. A 20-year-old soldier who invests constantly has an advantage that many people never recover from, not because they are smarter, but because they started earlier. Small amounts invested early often outperform larger amounts invested later. Third thing they do is avoid lifestyle inflation. This may be one of the most important principles of the entire video. Every promotion does not require a bigger lifestyle, people. Every pay raise does not require a bigger vehicle. Every increase in income does not require increased spending. In fact, folks, the people who become financially free are often the people who delay gratification the longest. They understand something most people never learn. Discipline today creates freedom tomorrow. And that freedom becomes incredibly valuable later in life. The fourth thing they do is protect their credit. Credit affects everything. What do I mean by that? Where you live, what you paid for insurance, what loans you even qualify for, what opportunities become available to you. Financially successful military members understand that credit is not just a score, it is a financial reputation, and they guard it carefully. All right? Now I want to speak directly to the younger soldiers watching this video, especially those who are just beginning their military service, their military careers. You do not need to look rich, folks, okay? You do not need to impress people. You do not need to finance an identity. You do not need approval from people who are struggling financially themselves. You do not need a luxury lifestyle to prove your worth. You do not need expensive possessions to demonstrate success. But quietly, learn quietly, invest quietly, grow quietly, because the people who are laughing at discipline today may someday wish they had practiced it. And the people chasing appearances today may someday envy the freedom you created through patience. Now, one of the greatest gifts you can give your future self is financial discipline. Not because money solves every problem, because, it does not, but because financial stability removes unnecessary problems that matters. As I bring this video to a close, I want you to remember just one thing. The military can be one of the greatest wealth building opportunities a person will ever receive, but only if they understand the difference between income and wealth. Income is what you earn. Wealth is what you keep. Income is what arrives. Wealth is what remains. And far too many people spend their entire lives chasing income while neglecting wealth. Do not make that mistake. Build discipline before lifestyle. Build habits before appearances. Build wealth before status. If you do that, your future will look very different from the future of most people around you. And years from now, you will be thankful that you learned this lesson early. And so there you have it. I hope this has been helpful. This is the Adjutant, and I'll see you in the next one. I wish you all blessings and blessings. Shalom.